In this video, we're going to talk about testing and how you'll be repeating the same test until you pass. It really is that simple. But welcome back to Woman of His Word. I pray that this blesses somebody that's questioning, why do I still have to go through this? Why have I not been able to get through that? And the reason being, a lot of the times is because you haven't passed the test. So I'm basing this video off of James chapter 1 verses 2 through 4. This is the amplified version, and the reason I'm using the amplified version is because it goes into a little more detail of the meaning of certain things, for people to deeper understand what's actually going on. So consider it nothing but joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you fall into various trials. Be assured that the testing of your faith through experience produces endurance, leading to spiritual maturity and inner peace. And let endurance have its perfect result and do a thorough work, so that you may be perfect and completely developed in your faith, lacking in nothing. So the part that I want to focus on there, are the testing of your faith through experience and letting the endurance have its perfect result and do a thorough work. So a lot of the times you'll have to repeat a test until it has its perfect result, until it has done a thorough work in you. That endurance, that patience in suffering, in trials and tribulations that is needed to come out of that for you to graduate. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about graduating, right? Passing. Many of us have, in the United States, we've had to take certain tests in order to go at the end of the school year, in order to go to the next grade, to graduate to the next grade level. Or for instance, if we take a test in order to be considered for a certain program or whatever the case is. A good teacher, and I'm talking about a good teacher, will not pass a student to the next grade level or graduate a student to the next subject, to the next lesson, if they haven't passed the current one that they're in. And sometimes, just like in school, if you got an F, if you got a D, if you got something below a C or a B, the teacher would say, okay, well, you have to redo this. And, or I'm going to give you another test on the same thing. You're going to have to redo this subject. You're going to have to redo this test, right? So a good teacher will not graduate a student to the next grade level if they haven't passed the test. The reason being is because if they do, even when the child hasn't passed, the student hasn't passed the test, then when the student gets to the next grade level, they graduate, they won't be able to understand the curriculum, the criteria, the things that are needed to sustain themselves in that grade level. And it actually does worse for the student if the teacher moves them forward without them passing, because then it leaves the huge potential for them to not learn the things that are necessary to carry forward what they need to carry, and then leading to failure and regressing altogether. And so this is the good teacher, right? Yeah, being the best teacher is not going to do that to you, because he doesn't want that for you. He doesn't want to see you fail the bigger things that he has in store for you. So he'd much rather be patient and endure with you failing the things that he has you in, to do that thorough work in you, to perfect that in you. What does it say? Letting endurance have its perfect result in you before he moves you to the next thing, because the next thing is going to be bigger. The next thing is going to hold more weight. So how much more are you going to fail if he lets you go and you're just like, yeah, I don't want to go through this anymore, yada, yada, yada. But you're the one that's failing the test. So if you don't want to go through it anymore, ask the Father, ask Yeshua, ask the Holy Spirit for strength to pass the next test. For wisdom and understanding and realizing, okay, this is the test. You know, sometimes we don't even realize we're in the test until we failed it. For instance, if you have a test to treat somebody a certain way in a moment where they're treating you opposite of how you would prefer, but the Father has shown you how to pass this test because He's shown you in your word. Remember, these are open book tests, right? We have the Bible, we have the word. Many of us, we have the Holy Spirit living inside of us. We have the ways of Yeshua to guide us and lead us as an example. This is an open book. We have the understanding, the wisdom, the knowledge. Yeah, we still don't pass the test, then we blame Yah, then we blame him. That makes no sense. Like, don't blame him for repeating something when you're the one that's not studying. And when I say studying, I mean like, okay, are you meditating on these verses? Are you hanging on to these verses so that you know when something happens, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to react. This is how you're supposed to handle that situation. And the problem is people get into this comfortable state where they're like, well, I know better, I'm going to do better. Well, if you did know better and you were going to do better, you wouldn't keep repeating the same test. So sometimes it takes praying your way all the way through the test while you're going through it in your mind, asking Holy Spirit to help you in the moment, remembering the verses that He's given you to hold on to, because chances are very, very high that the Father has already shown you how to pass this test. Your flesh keeps getting in the way. It's like the student that says, oh, I already know the answers. I don't need to study. Or the student that, waits till the last minute. Don't be that student. Don't be that student. We are all students, right? We're all supposed to be learning. Excuse my squeaky chair. We're all supposed to be learning under the Holy Spirit, Messiah, and applying what we've learned through the Word. That's the test. That's actually the whole test of life. Are we going to apply what we've learned? Are we going to apply what we've learned? Or are we just reading the words? Are we being doers of the word, which is also in James, or just hearers of the word? The word is not there just for you to listen to. That's part of it, because faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of Yah. But the word is there so that you have a way to follow an instruction of how you live. And Psalm 119 is a great example of this, of David just speaking continually of how he loves the precepts and the law and the commands of Yah. And that's what we should desire in our hearts, because that's what's going to help us pass these tests of life. Like, life in general is a huge test of a whole bunch of mini tests that we are going to be put through. And the only way to pass these tests the right way is studying to show ourselves approved and applying these things to our lives, and genuinely asking Yah for a heart that is inclined to walk in His ways. Because we could also just be studying, and we'll do the things, but it's not with a heart that actually desires to do it. I'm sure we've all been there before. That makes us more like the Pharisees. And so it's not about am I doing everything right? It's more actually about, am I doing these things with a good heart? Because if I have a heart that desires to do the right thing, I'm going to do the right thing with the right heart. So because a teacher that allowed the students to move forward, because there are some teachers that have done these things, right? They would allow a student to move forward without actually having put in the work or passing the test or letting that work be thorough in them. That would be on the responsibility of the teacher. There are some teachers that don't give a crap, right? They'll move a child forward and they don't take the time. Some of them just don't have the energy or the capacity to deal with certain children and teaching them. That happens. It is what it is. But when it comes to Yah, He's our teacher. He knows, because He's our creator, He's our Father. He knows that if He lets us go forward and we fail, He's then responsible for that. He's responsible for that. And so we know that the Father's judgments are righteous and he's good in all of his ways. Why would he want that for his children? Why would he want that? Even why would he want to put that on his name, the failure of his children? Think about that. He's a good father. Every good and perfect gift comes from him. So he's not going to desire to see you fail. That's not what he wants. In fact, he wants to see you shine. He wants to see you pass. He wants to see you go forward. And if he can trust you with the smaller things, then he can move you forward to the bigger things. So a lot of these tests are actually just in your day-to-day life that you haven't passed, or things that you've been praying for. Father, why isn't this changing? Why isn't this happening yet? Well, it's because you haven't passed the test. It hasn't resulted in its perfect work yet within you. And I'm not talking about you're perfect all of a sudden. We're going to continue to be perfected until the coming of the Messiah. What I'm talking about, there's certain areas in your life that shouldn't affect you the way they do anymore. That shouldn't affect you. That shouldn't trouble you. That shouldn't, move you the way that they used to. But they still do. And that's where you're missing the point. The things that you keep going through, they're still affecting you in a ways that he doesn't want them to. You're still ineffective in that. You're still not able to be used in past that level because you still you still haven't conquered that. And so if you haven't conquered something, if you haven't overcome something, you're not capable of being used in the areas where he wants to use you. You can take this with any example. If you haven't stopped doing this, how can he use you in this area? A lot of the times the things that we think are tied to our promises and our calling are not actually what is tied to our promises and our calling. So for instance, we may think that if Yah is calling you to be, let's say, a teacher, you may think that the only thing tied to your calling is I just have to learn how to show and instruct people how to do things. But actually, if you're being called to be a teacher, you have to learn how to talk to people. You have to learn how to explain yourself. You have to learn how to treat people. You have to learn how to have compassion. You have to learn how to have how to be empathetic. There's so many things that are tied to what he's called us to, because it's not just about the specific lane that we're in, it's about the overall person that is carrying the calling. And if that overall person, the overall spirit of that person is tainted, then you're going to be useless in that calling regardless. You're going to be useless. You may be able to achieve certain things, but they're going to be through selfish ambition, and they're going to be through the way and the plans that were not of Yah. What you do want is for your works to be tested in the fire and to remain. So Yah being the perfect teacher, he doesn't want us to fail. So if we are failing a certain test that he's proving us in, it's because we have to stop, pause, and realize, okay, why am I failing? Why am I failing? Am I not using the tools that I have? Am I letting my flesh get in the way? Am I forgetting what he said to do in these situations? Am I forgetting the word that he spoke to me specifically about how to handle this certain person or this certain thing? Why am I failing? Because if I'm failing, it's because of me, not because of him. And what is he trying to teach me about myself in this test, in this lesson? What is he trying to remove from me? What happens to me before I get to this point where I take these tests and then I fail? Where is that disconnect between me going through it, me seeing it's going to happen, me going through it, and then me actually failing? Where is the disconnect? Where is it happening? So he does allow time and is patient with us to be able to produce that, right? I keep getting it mixed up, but it's to let endurance have its perfect result and do a thorough work within us. He does allow time, and he is very, very patient with us, but you don't want to take his patience for granted. He knows if you're actually trying your best on the test and just missing it because of, you not completely understanding or not asking the right questions or not seeking him for the right answers, versus okay, I have everything I need to pass and I just don't feel like it. I just don't feel like doing what you said, yeah. I don't feel like following the instructions to pass this test. I don't feel like studying. I don't feel like working toward this. He knows the difference. So this is not, oh, keep failing, and when you feel like getting it right, get it right. This is more like actually put your best foot forward, but figure out what are the missing pieces to the puzzle, because you will keep repeating something until the Father proves you and he sees that, oh, what I actually taught my daughter, what I actually showed my son, they're actually putting it to work. That endurance is finally having its perfect result and doing a thorough work in them. And then he looks down from his throne and delights in you. That's what he wants. That's what he wants. He doesn't want you to fail. He doesn't want you to think you're a failure. He wants you to understand where you're at and where you're getting it wrong, and how everything is a test. And he's watching us to see, not as someone who is looking down at us with disgust and disdain and making sure that we won't pass. He's watching us to see if we get it. And if not, then he has to teach us a little longer, which means sometimes we have to learn the hard way a little longer. Because we can be stubborn. We can be led by the flesh. So I pray that this video blesses somebody, and it's a reminder for the next test that you have an open book, you have the Holy Spirit, and walk in the authority of his Son. We have the authority to overcome these things, overcome these tests and the temptations, right, that are allowed to come our way to prove us. I pray that this video blesses y'all in Yeshua's name.